Hello, everybody. BIC Podcast, episode 50. Yes, 50 episodes. And on this episode, we're going to go down the nostalgia train, go several stops down on the nostalgia train. I'll briefly talk the Packers' big win against the Chiefs. Left the door open on that one, but really didn't have that one on the bingo card. And Eric got something right. I know. I'm as surprised as you are. That and more on this episode of the BIC Podcast. Yes, the wonderful riffs and the seeing eyes of Brett Favre shall bestow upon.
I noticed in watching that, the start of the show there, I wear this shirt a lot.
Have you considered getting a second shirt?
I have two just like this. I got a red one and this blue one. And
look, all I'm saying is at least the rest of us have excuses. We're literally wearing hoodies. I could be wearing multiple shirts under this hoodie. Like, we can keep swapping it out,
Yeah, it was just funny.
And I bought new hoodies.
Yeah, I was watching that and I'm like, I'm wearing that shirt. Then the second clip came and I went, that's the same shirt.
Is that supposed to be a bicycle sprocket?
You got it.
Okay. I was trying to figure it out earlier if it was like a saw, but I realized it's a sprocket. I got you.
Rear cassette.
Amazing. Sensational. So what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to be very nice. I'm going to be very generous in the spirit of 5% more mature. What I'm going to do is I am going to allow Eric. Now, I will remind you his background. Eric is also the same individual who gave us the single worst set of NHL predictions in recorded history. Like a monkey could have literally gotten a couple right. And somehow Eric managed to get absolute perfection in his wrongness, the wrongness of wrongness. But before I say that, we're going to cover this because Eric did get something right. And I know what some of you are thinking. The end is nigh. The rapture is upon us. Only the righteous will be spared. But if you have that same feeling inside in the pit of your stomach, before the end of days take us all, then consider possibly going to amgcollectibles.ca, partner of the channel, and pick up a variety of different things that you can enjoy, at least have some box breaks or open some packs, some wonderful things to give you some warmth and comfort in the final days before mankind finally ends in a very sad, fiery pit of death. However, before that, you can go to amgcollectibles.ca or the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel where you can enjoy the stylings of the AMG Collectibles staff and wonderful, wonderful warmth and Eastern Canadian hospitality. Yes, Brendan.
Since we are more mature, I want to give Eric a small 5% ounce of credit because although he did massively screw up the NHL playoff predictions, like
literally the worst. It could not have been worse
the entire way. Let's rewind a little bit ahead of that. And he did get, and I remember him distinctly bragging about, he was pretty good in the NFL playoffs, except, and I may be off a little bit here, I think he was like perfect until it was time to predict the teams that were actually going to make it into the Super Bowl. So he was like perfect all the way through until the two games that
until the Final Four. So, until the Final Four.
Yeah. So he was better in football than hockey. I did want to, but I wanted to give him some credit. He was right for a bit of a period of time during the NFL playoffs.
So with all that preamble said, because we wanted to make sure we laid the lay of the land in particular so that, Eric didn't get too high on himself, but I am going to give him a moment here. We discussed the Babe Ruth 1914 Baltimore News card that REA Auctions was auctioning off, and we took predictions on a variety to see who was going to get the final total correct. Now, the total needed to include the juice. You got to include the 20% juice on it. So we took different numbers on it. We did it Prices Right rules, so you couldn't go over. And by the skin of his teeth, without near a penny to spare, 7.2 million on the dot, 6 million plus the 20% juice, 7.2 million, which was what Eric Sanderson Orr did in fact say. Eric, this is your victory lap moment. I will allot you 20 seconds to bask in the warm glow of your moment. Please begin.
It's nice to come back from the pits of hell in which last season's NHL playoffs analysis was for me. it's nice to know that I still have somewhat of an idea of what's going on in this hobby and in sports. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody their support. And in the last 1 second,
I
I'm
have
sorry
one
that will be lost in
question.
editing. Go
I have
on.
a question though, Eric.
yes.
What is your plans for the card? And how did you get your mom to loan you that much money?
So I'm having her sell a kidney.
Only one?
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought maybe she had gotten the Crumble sponsorship, but okay.
Well, if they got his Crumble sponsorship, they could have mega bid on it. They could have gone over
Well,
6 million. That seems like peasant money right there.
Yeah.
But see, I figured like the 6 million was the mega bid, and that's how Eric got it right. That's why I was asking what he's going to do with the card. He just bought it at that number so he could
The baseball card.
claim to fame to be right. And,
Yeah, I did it. I bought it simply to claim to be correct and to make up from the horrors of the NHL playoffs of last year. But since it's baseball, I could not care any less about it. And I didn't even know where I put it. I mean, I got it last night. I don't even know where it is around here, but if I find it, I'll probably just throw it away.
So the important takeaway, though, in the course of Eric trying to insult baseball, he basically acknowledged that a 7.2 really $1 million card is not a big deal to him, which means that the like button and what I'm about to charge him going forward, which is increased exponentially in accordance to the previous utterance, will be completely fine. So those of you watching on YouTube, if you could hit the like button, I'm going to invoice Eric. Clearly, he's loaded, so he will pay. Hit the like button to make sure Eric pays because he can afford it. Moving
My
on.
mother only has 2 kidneys. She has to keep one. I don't.
That
have
sounds an awful lot like a you problem and not an us problem. Moving on.
All right,
Now, going forward let's discuss here a little bit of the footballs. I did mention what the schedule was with the whole Packers thing, and I sped. And what's funny is I did qualify because it's one of those things. The way the season is gone, I assume nothing now, Brett. At this point, I can no longer assume anything. So I literally and I can certainly grab a replay of it. I specifically said they should lose, ? But nothing surprises me at this point. So this was the one on the remaining schedule that was supposed to be the most probable, the most likely loss. Now they could lose certainly against one of these other crummier teams, but now, the natives looking at it, there's 2 things that now they're coming out of it. First of all, it was a very good performance by the team. The first drive was almost 8 minutes, which was really a very strong start to it. And that's what you want. Like that's almost a perfect start against a team like Kansas City. You basically are making him sit there and wait for you while you're slowly driving down the field and consuming a ton of the play clock and the game clock and overall. So it was very good. And they were able to score and they were actually able to get some stops, which was fantastic. It really degraded in the last couple of minutes there. That last drive, it really all fell apart for the referees. It became a complete disaster by everybody's estimation. But in the end, full value for a big win. Now, what it comes down to is the rest of the schedule. Now it gets interesting because now they're playing the Giants. So now it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. They should be favored there. And then you're also playing against Tampa. Again, you should be favored. And you're playing the Carolina Panthers. So you're looking, and they are in the playoffs as we speak. So they really do have control over their own destiny. The next 3 games are about the nicest stretch you could ask for if you want to solidify a position. And then at the very end, you come down to a game against the Vikings and a game against the Bears. So you completely have control of your own destiny at this point, depending on what you decide to do with that over the next several games.
It sounds like they have a chance.
At least a fairly decent chance. They are in position should they complete the story there. And the other piece of it, bringing the card side of things, I've been kind of monitoring. I was chatting with the guys before we hit record. I'm watching some of the Jordan Love stuff, and the prices are moving aggressively upward on some of the. Like I'm watching full auctions, and I'm watching these late. Like I'm watching this one here that's got about 5 minutes left, and I want to see how much it bumps up at the tail end here. But they're starting to move, and it's very interesting observing how much the price is starting to get adjusted in such a short period of time. So my curiosity this week, upcoming, is how many of the traditional influencers start throwing Jordan Love's name into the hype side of things. Because obviously they're playing well. He has played well and steadily improved. The last little stretch of games has been really good for him. And I guess the question is like, do you believe that to be a trend continuing? Again, the next 3 teams in particular, the potential is there for him to have a couple of decent games in there, which would make the stat line look pretty good. So that's really what it comes down to question-wise.
Does Jordan Love and Taylor Swift have does she put a heart in her signature too, I believe? They both have similarity there. He might get to the Taylor Swift level.
Crazy.
And
Now, it was funny. Real quick before I move on to the other teams or any of the other ones you guys want to touch on, I am going to point something out just related to this from the card angle of it. I have cards from, of course, channel beloved Favre. But part of the fun for me is having at least a couple of cards. I do have some Aaron Rodgers cards, although obviously not as many. It's not as fun for me to collect his cards, but I try to have at least a couple. I want to have a representation of the last several of the main quarterbacks. But it's one of those things where obviously since basically the late 80s, and when the Magic Man was part of it, Favre took over, and then Aaron Rodgers took over, and it looks like Jordan Love now is going to be here for at least the next couple of seasons. We'll see what happens after that, long-term contracts, all that. But he is the next era of Packer football, whatever that's going to be. Good, bad, or indifferent. He's going to be at least for the next little bit. So I want to see if I can get a couple of cards to match up. I do have a few, so that's nice, but I want to see if I can get one. But I got to be honest, the whole Jay Hart thing, as far as an autograph is concerned, it's kind of lame. The Rodgers is also kind of a lame autograph, but at least there's more to it. It's expensive because he doesn't sign as much. Jordan has signed a decent amount, but this autographs is so lame. But at the same time, I do want to have a representation to kind of fit in the last couple of my. This is just so disappointing. Eric, I need a better autograph from this guy.
I can tell you this, and hopefully you won't get on me too much because we are 5% more mature. As you know, I collect autographs, and I'm lucky enough to work for a large sports memorabilia shop, and we have autograph signings all the time, and we get some pretty big names. Well, we had 8 of the 1970 Boston Bruins Stanley Cup championship team in recently, and I got a chance to spend 3 hours with these guys, and every single one of these guys, all in their 70s and 80s, they are taking time. Every time something is put in front of them, they take their time and they make sure that everything is perfect and that you can read every single one. And we had these guys do hundreds of autographs each for us, the shop, for the fans that came in. And they would sit there and they would make sure that it was put where you wanted it, in the color pen that you wanted it. And they would take their time and they would make sure every loop was the same. And every one of them commented. Okay, 8 guys, Stanley Cup rings on every hand. Every one of them commented about how disappointing it is with today's athletes and their horrible autographs and their signatures that they are putting on products and giving to fans. And they don't understand why, because they learned that this was important from the people before them, and they tried to pass this on to the people below them, and they did, because the people below them would be guys that played in the 80s, and in the 90s, and all those guys have great signatures. Somewhere after that generation, everything started falling apart in all the sports. And what is that, Brandon?
That's a plastic card, a debit card. Part of the change is the guys in the generations that you were talking to, they got paid, and they paid a lot of their bills with a paper check that they would sign. Today, there is how many times have you seen anybody paying for anything with a check? I don't even know if.
I was going to take it a step further and just point out that the cursive is not taught in schools at all anyway.
Yeah.
So I was still of the age at the time that I was in school. You would still be taught cursive. That was still a piece of it, because even into Brandon's almost exactly the same age as I am. We're a couple of years apart. And Eric is 1,800 years older than both of us. I think he was on stone tablets is what he cut his teeth on. Literally cut his teeth on stone tablets.
You have to chip it away.
Bit on them. It was very awkward. Very strange. Very strange. Eventually, he realized that he could use an implement instead of his teeth, and it was a game changer. Big game changer in that step. But the point is that even somebody who is in their early 40s now, if you go back to school, you were still doing cursive, you were still writing notes. By the time I got to university, we had laptops, like I had one, but very few people took them to class. You'd use them, like
Mhm.
you do them when you're studying, you take them to the library and you're working on some, but you're not in the class actually taking notes on your laptop. It didn't make sense. The battery life wasn't quite there. It wasn't convenient. You want it to be near power outlets and everything. Today, the laptops are so good, you totally would take them and do that, no problem. So you were still writing in a notepad or a notebook, even at that point, even in your university era. Today, you could do a tablet, you could do a laptop, you could do whatever. So you're going to know how to type really well. The typing is automatic, it's built in. So you're more likely to have a typing class and learn how to do that, or how to use that piece of technology rather than figure out how to use a pen and paper. So if
My
you're never writing your
daughter,
name for anything, why would you have a signature?
yeah, like my daughter has had straight A's. She just turned 18. She has had straight A's since elementary school, since she started school. So educationally and all of that, she's up there. She took advanced classes, what are they, AP, advanced placement, all those. She was doing college courses, but you cannot read her writing. When she writes something on paper, it is atrocious. Love her to death, but I seen her handwriting and I was like, what the heck is this? Because it's like Carla said, everything is done like they literally have to take their Chromebooks. That's what everything is done on. And it's not just their fault. It's also on the teacher side because it's easier for the teachers now to grade them. You turn the assignment in on the Chromebook, email, whatever, they go through it, and you know, it's much easier for them as well. So it
I'll throw in one
sucks.
more thing. I'll throw in one more thing before we conclude this iteration of Old Man Yellow Clouds. We'll finish the segment. But before we finish the segment, I will add one more thing. One of my buddies that I went to university with, so we're the same age, born same year, same age, same class. He became a school teacher, and he is a high school teacher. And every time he wrote this, now this goes back. Remember, I just said a moment ago that we in class we still have to write notes in notepads and notebooks. So obviously, you have to write a lot. And I was writing pages and pages of notes sometimes when I was in the class because there was a lot of material that we had to go through. And he was doing the same. Sometimes I tried to read his writing. And remember, we're in the same generation. So we're exactly in the same generation. His writing, and I told him, it's like, your writing looks like you owed money to the mob and they took it out on your writing hand with a hammer. And that's what it looks like happened there. Like, I'm assuming that's what occurred because that's the only explanation I have for these are not even letters. These are not hieroglyphics. I don't know what this is. I can't read this shit. And he's a school teacher and teaching children. So the future is doomed.
Likely.
Yeah.
I,
I thought I'd throw that in there.
if I could just end it with this when it comes to autographs, because it does bother
You want to
me.
go beyond the future is doomed? I felt like that was the definitive.
I just want to add a story.
Okay.
Because I it's one of my favorite stories. I've probably told it on different platforms and shows or whatever, but I really like telling it. So I had the opportunity to we had Andre Provino come into the shop. He played for the Canadians when he first came up, and he played for the Bruins later on in his career, and he's in his like late 80s. Wonderful gentleman. I really enjoy spending time with him. His autograph, meticulous, absolutely gorgeous. And we started having this conversation about the younger generation and the current generation, how they're just scribbling and they don't take their time. And he told me that when he was a rookie with the Montreal Canadiens, Henri Richard told him and the other rookies that signing your name is an honor, and you will, these people want your autograph. You should be privileged and thankful that they have any type of interest in you. So you will, and if you know anything about Andre Richard, very intense man. He's the first great, probably superstar of hockey, and what he said goes. And when he told these kids, you will take your time, You will look people in the eye, you will shake their hands, you will talk to them, and your autograph is going to be perfect each and every time. And here this guy is in his late 80s, and he was told this in the 50s by one of the greatest hockey players of all time. And to this day, he signs an autograph for somebody. He hears Henri Richard's voice saying, "You will make this is an experience for this person that they remember. This might be your 1 millionth autograph, but this is important to that fan, and you will take your time and give them a moment of your time." And that's why he is such a gentleman, because this is how he was brought up through professional sports. And somewhere along the line, these new kids have lost that. I think it has a lot to do with the amount of money they're getting paid. These guys in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even up until the 80s, were not making millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. Now you have baseball players making over $250 million. They don't want to sign autographs. They don't care about you as a fan. They have no time for you. These professional athletes have become elitists and do not care about the fan base. Where when guys were making, $6,000 a year and had to work summer jobs up in Canada and bale hay and work on the farms up in Canada, they had a connection to the people. And when they interacted with fans, that meant something to them. They were honored that people cared about meeting them. You think Fish Boy gives a rat's ass if somebody comes up to him and says, "Oh, it's a pleasure."
Listen, first of all, I'm here for Fish Boy slander in all forms. So
Yeah.
I'm first of all in favor
So
of that. The only question that I
Fish Boy
have,
doesn't care. He makes ungodly amounts of money. There are people out there who say he's the greatest baseball player to ever, lift a baseball bat. He doesn't care about what his autograph looks like. He doesn't care about you as a fan. And it shows in their interactions with fans and in their autographs. It's sad.
so Brandon, I didn't want to interrupt because I was enjoying the Fish Boy slander. So that's always a winner with me to start off with. However, I did want to question, and like we are being 5% more mature, so I'm not going to call you all the way out of the carpet. Do you feel though it was appropriate that when we were at the expo, when people were asking you for your autograph, that you demanded crumble cookies and told them to go screw? Do you feel like that you're being a bit of a hypocrite, given that you're taking this stance, but at the same time, when you're adoring public, the people that were out there to see you, the one person who was probably out there to see you, and you told them to go screw while demanding crumble cookies. This is 5% more mature. I'd be much worse on Friday. Way worse. I'd be like, I'm actually being 50% more mature right now than what I can do. Go on.
I'm trying to figure this out because, all right, hell with the Fish Boy thing, but I've heard he's actually very nice to the fans and actually interacts with them very well.
I think Eric had a very bad experience. I think it soured him. It was not good.
I was
hold on.
Okay.
You just recently talked about how awesome Jeremy Swayman was, who is a very, very young player on a Boston Bruins team that broke a regular season wins record, and he is the starting goalie of. So how are you now classifying that all these young millionaires don't care about their fans?
Look at his autograph. His autograph is horseshit.
How do you know he can even write his name? Eric, he never learned how to read.
You just talked about how he was so great with the fans and how he was such a nice young man. So he can't write his name. That doesn't make him a bad person because he's a millionaire. It doesn't mean he doesn't care about the fans.
How are we supposed to expect him if he never, to him, it's all pictures. It's gifts. They communicate in gifts and emojis.
I think it comes to the point, and I wanted to mention this because we were talking about the foosballs. Your team was the only one that scored this week. There's 3 of us here, all rooting for different teams. Your team is the only one that scored this week. Mine didn't play. His may not have, not have. But I just checked, and this blew my mind. The New England Patriots have scored one touchdown. One. In the last 4 weeks. One touchdown. Now, I will say one of those weeks was a bye, but still, one touchdown and 2 field goals. One touchdown and 2 field goals in 4 weeks.
Yes, they're very bad.
That is terrible.
Yes, very
Like
good.
the Packers just beat the Chiefs and scored more points against the Chiefs
Yes,
than the Patriots have in a full calendar month.
yes.
Like I would love to keep being on New England, and I would, but let me actually pose something that is actually fascinating. Forget about that. Their offensive ineptitude is noted. However, the defense has actually done a decent job. What's scary is they also set a record for, like, look, if they're scoring no points and getting blown out 40-0, that's one thing. They literally lost 6-0. What about the Chargers? How shitty are you guys that you could only score? They scored 0 points, but you only scored 6. You get 7 points for a converted touchdown. If you get the extra point, you get 7.
Isn't Bosa injured?
I couldn't tell you.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I wasn't checking.
I think I might be. I know he was, or I don't know if he's still out. But
all I'm trying to get at is that the folks that collect Justin Herbert cannot feel comfortable about the fact, yeah, you won the game.
Oh, no.
You could not score a converted touchdown against a team. They're really bad, y'all. They're really bad.
Actually,
its defense is not really bad. The Patriots defense is really
it's the Rocky thing all over again. I don't know if you guys remember Rocky 2. It's like, you won, but you didn't beat him. That's basically what happened. It's like, yeah, you won.
Yeah.
Technically, barely.
2 field goals, I believe.
Yeah. Well, for the 6 points, either that or they didn't convert the, or they didn't convert the. Yeah, it's not good. However you want to slice it, it's like
a touchdown.
The win counts, but I'm just saying, like, there's differences. Like, there's different types of wins. That's one that if you're a Chargers fan, you're not going to feel that good about it. It's not going to make you feel great.
Our starting running back was basically just getting 5+ yards a carry, and was marching down the field and dominating.
Got hurt,
and that was it. We had no offense after that.
Yeah, he was my newest casualty to my fantasy team. It's been one of those years.
We probably
every week.
Hindsight being 2020, knowing that the Chargers only scored 6 points, we probably would have won the game if Stevenson didn't get hurt, because he's just dominating and he was just taking chunks of yardage, and he just would have kept on going. But he ended up getting his leg rolled up on and getting hurt, and he was out.
Makes sense. So let me propose a question here. So obviously we had our fun and everything, but is there anything else NFL wise we want to touch on before we move on? I do want to talk about one quick thing, and then we'll get into the nostalgia topic, which actually plays back into what Eric was talking about a little bit, but we'll come back around to it. I'll explain kind of where my head's at on this and what I wanted to discuss. But anything else NFL wise or anything like that you guys wanted to touch on?
I don't want to talk about the NFL anymore. I'm from New England right now. I don't want to talk about football.
I know that, like, I can't talk much about, like, I'm having fun, razzing the Patriot fan, but I'm gonna be honest. I'm just enjoying the Ravens and Lamar still being, playing well this season, but I'm not going to go into this high hope talk and become the Boston Bruins of the regular season, because let's face it, like, I would be setting myself up for failure, and I don't want to go down that lane. So
at least a Hindenburg-like failure, if nothing else. Yeah, fair.
Well, we're not setting records, though.
True. All right, so we'll move on. I did want to touch on one quick thing. It was funny because this weekend was actually a good and interesting weekend for some auctions. So we won't make this a regular segment, but since it did catch my eye, I thought I would quickly talk about it. Obviously, we had Eric with his one correct prediction. So, the broken clock is right twice a day. So he did get one there. But also, there was a Pete.
It wasn't just Price is Right where I didn't go over, so I win. I was exactly right. Just
like Eric, did I not give you a set side time?
Yes.
So moving on.
That's one.
So PWCC, and we can clarify more about the hockey predictions if you want. We can go through them round by round and talk about those predictions if you like. We can spend some time on that. I'm happy to do it. Moving on. All right. So PWCC had its auctions, and one notable thing from this past one. Now, there's some people that talk about PWCC ad nauseum. I'm not interested in doing that. However, one thing I did note in this particular PWCC auction is that it looked like maybe someone who built a collection had a lot of stuff from the inaugural year of the Cup, because I noticed a preponderance of different autographs and also the different patch cards, including one of one, some of the really high end stuff. So it looks like, from what I can tell, it looks like it came from one collection because it was there all in one auction all at once. So it looks like one person dropped a whole bunch of big cards. And this here, I'm going to show two images. I'll quickly talk through them, but it shows you the difference in the perception and kind of the desirability of certain things versus the other. So one of the cards that was actually there as part of that auction was the Mike Modano variant. So this is the patch variant. First year of the Cup, it is a patch variant out of 10, which is a very nice card. But as you can see, if you're watching the video version of it, it sold for $1,020. And I did not have that on my bingo card. It's a cool card. Like, it really is. It's basically like a variant of the same numbering as the base card, but by having a patch variant, and it's not a big patch window, it's a small patch window, but it is the Cup, it is the inaugural year, but it's out of 10, $1,020. All those patch cards from the Cup went for crazy money.
Yeah, someone's trying to complete a set. There's no way that's worth that.
Yeah. And that's basically what I was watching this one because I was curious where it'd go for. I felt like it would go for too much, but it was crazy, like the level at which it went. And it was even Eric's favorite third-party grader. So, like, obviously that helps.
So, I mean, they should be giving those away if they're in Beckett slabs.
Yeah, but I do think there are folks that were building a set of this that were probably chasing after it. So you had folks that were chasing big bids, because for this you got to do the extended bidding. You can't just do one crazy bid and expect to win. People are kind of like jockeying back and forth. And I saw that price creeping up after a while, and I was like, okay, I don't know what's going to end up. This is where it ended up. 1,000. Cool card, not in my price bracket, not in my price range. However, to compare and contrast, again, I said this weekend. This one I won this weekend also, and I'm going to quickly walk you through it. Again, it's a patch card. This one's not out of 10. This one's out of 15. But this was from Upper Deck Flagship. So this is Upper Deck Flagship. This is 0910 Upper Deck Flagship. And these are numbered to 15 because the Upper Deck Flagship patches were still numbered fairly low at that point. So this is still Playing Days Modano, 3-color jersey patch. Again, small window, but the other one was a small window as well. This is still in the aughts, not even the 2010s yet. Again, Playing Days. This one I purchased for the princely sum of $56. This is more in line with what I would want and expect to pay for some of these things. So same weekend, 2 patch cards numbered to 15 or less. This is the one that I bought for $56, which was a little bit less than the other one that went for $1,020. I hope the other person is very happy with their purchase. I'm very content with mine. Thank you very much.
I spoke on this exact topic last night. I was
on the Big Scott 35 channel.
Yeah, I was graciously invited, and we talked about that. We were talking a lot about autographs, though, not so much the memorabilia, but autographs on something like the Cup versus something from a couple of years ago on card on a lesser, product. Why is that, $5? But because it's the Cup and it has a sticker auto on it, that's $5,000. So we had and obviously I'm making up these numbers, but it doesn't make any sense. But it goes back to rule number 1 on a Friday live show, and it doesn't make any sense of why somebody would pay these outrageous numbers for a upper end product when you can get better sometimes for a lesser product. I mean, I always use this. I mean, go ahead and show me something better than this, right? This is O-Pee-Chee Premier. I mean, you show me something better than that. Now, if this said the Cup, this would be worth $1,000 something. But it says O-Pee-Chee Premier, so it's worth what normal people can afford.
So for the audio version, folks, what he was holding was a OPG Premier Remnants patch card of Ray Bork that he also had in person autographed. So we'll ignore the autograph, but it is a patch card, and I think it's out of 35. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's out of 35 for that particular one.
And it's got 3 different patches on it, and it has the cutout of HOF, all multicolor, all threads, stitchings, the whole thing. You won't find anything better. But I barely had to pay for that.
Well, let me go a step further because first of all, there's different levels to collecting, and as the first thing you said when you seen it is somebody must be building a set, and we always gripe about collectors not doing set building and stuff like that anymore. So I'm not going to knock somebody if they got the money to throw at it and that's the set they're building.
I
That's
am going
the
to add one
upper
thing though. I
echelon.
will add one thing quickly for that. Bear in mind that 0506 was the first year. It was the inaugural year. So for certain collectors, that one holds a particular prestige. So you have to bear that in mind. That does add into the whole equation. Please continue.
But even there's different levels to collecting. Let's go with the baseball side of things. If you want to go on a cheaper budget friendly level, you stick to like Topps Flagship or something like that. If you want to go upper echelon level and you got the money for it, you go with like Topps Dynasty. And we talk about there needs to be something for everyone. So I'm perfectly fine with that. What I have a question for is why the hell do you spend $1,000 for was that 1 inch by 1 inch patch?
It was a very the reason I use the examples I use is twofold. Number one, they both did sell on the same weekend. One obviously I bought, and the other one I was watching. The patch windows on both are tiny on both cases, but one of them was Upper Deck Flagship from 0910. So it was Upper Deck Flagship, a tough card to pull, obviously, out of 15. That is a tough card. Both game used. So that piece is apples to apples. They're both game used. But obviously, the Cup is the highest end product that Upper Deck provides. Flagship is Flagship. But again, we're still using game used pieces, small windows. It is a tiny patch piece for that particular
But
one.
that's the question I've always got. So $1,020 on that was one of the tiniest patch windows I think I've ever seen. How much would the whole damn game used jersey cost? Think about that.
Starting at 2, just Joe Nobody usually starts around $2,000.
It changed over the years. I can actually tell you for fun, and I know Maigret has received a lot of abuse in recent years, deservedly so, especially after the cardboard thing. They received a lot of abuse for their authentication side of it. I can tell you that maybe about 5 years ago or more, Modano actually still had some game worn playing days jerseys available on Maigret, who was getting it from the teams at the time. That's how they got their supply. And I could buy the Modano for $5,000 US. $5,000 US, and I could buy the full jersey, including I think one was maybe $6,000 for a while. There was obviously got snapped up eventually. The $6,000 one was from the 2000 finals. They didn't win that one, but that was the one where they went to. You could have had a finals gamer from Modano for about $6,000, and that might have been closer to 10 years ago. But even still, like $6,000, and you get a finals gamer, you get the whole thing, whole game used jersey.
That's my point. So I get it's going to cost more, but some of the numbers that are thrown out here for these patch cards that are a small, tiny piece of fabric,
right,
are in comparable. You could buy for just a little more the whole damn jersey. And there was no autograph on that card or anything for $1,000. Now, if you want a nice patch or a nice auto, I like, yours was 3 color. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
The one you bought for 50 some bucks was 3 color. That one was 2 color. Now, sure, it had the gold. All right, cool.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, I don't know. I can't get into the camp of buying a tiny small piece of jersey for that kind of the ones I've bought. I have spent a little bit that would probably some people might say was excessive on, game used memorabilia or whatever, but it was the likes of Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, Honus Wagner, like the stuff that I can't buy even a full game used jersey of, let alone, you don't see much of that stuff out there to begin with. So, and it wasn't thousands. Like I think I paid 200 or 300 on my
Sure.
Ruth.
Mhm.
And that's a tiny, I mean, props to Modano and props to the guy that had the money to spend that, but I don't know. Like, to Eric's point, if the person's making a set or whatever, I'm not opposed to that, but it just seems sometimes these little pieces of relics get a little out of hand on the dollar amount. So
I don't think for those particular ones, I think it helped that even for the small window that it was, it did help that at least for the size window, at least it did have multicolor because it could have been an out of 10. It could have been literally a one color piece. It could have still been. But I do think it was more the set collectors that are the ones that dominate those because and part of the reason I think it sold for as much as it did, part of it is that those dried up years ago. And they dried up years ago because the set collectors scooped them up. It was the folks that were building those patch sets and they went and put together complete sets of them. But yeah, they're just sitting there hoarded. Hockey folks. So a lot of times, and I think Big Scott did an episode where he was talking to hockey guys as well. I don't remember if Eric was on that one or not. But the point is that he Scott is trying to talk himself around the understanding of what the difference is. The difference is they hoard. That's the difference. That's it. They hoard,
they
and there
control the
is
market.
yeah, but part of it is because they just like having the volume. And there are certain collectors who like having a lot of volume, and that's kind of their thing. They'll literally buy cool patch cards, not even their favorite team, not even their favorite player. They just see like, oh my god, cool patch, I gotta have it. And that's the collection thing. Cool patches. So they're like, I don't care what team, I don't care what player. If it's a cool patch, I want it. So so then they're hoarding it. So then if you are a collector of the team or collector of the player, you're out there looking, why can't I find this? Remember, that's an out of 10. In all the years, I think maybe that's the second copy of that card I've seen. Again, there are 10. This is from '05. So most of the tins have been opened. So the supply is out there, whatever it is, the majority of those, but most of them are probably sitting in a set right now. That's why
So
they're
here's a
not available in
question.
the market. Yeah.
Here's a question. You're a Modano super collector PC guy. You've got the checklist. You've knocked
Mhm.
a huge portion of it out, and you didn't purchase at 1,020, and it would have been a huge, pillar to the collection. First year cup out of
Well,
10.
that's a funny
People
thing.
like
For
that.
me, it wouldn't have been a pillar.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
Sure.
it would have been a nice piece
A
to
nice card.
add into the
Sure.
collection.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
What was your number in to make a play if it had sat there?
What
2 to
was the
300?
recommended?
Like $300. Like $300 would have been like I really it's a nice card. And I love the first year cup stuff. I think it's very nice. I actually really enjoy it. But I'm not killing myself for a patch piece. Again, a
That
small
was the
window
point.
patch piece. Yeah. But because I have paid more than what I just said for stuff like the larger patch windows, the limited logos, because you're getting this big square.
Mhm.
And like at the expo, I bought from Steve Angel, a buddy of mine. I bought one, but the patch window is literally 2.5 times the size. It's a full square, and it's this whole bit with like a chunk of one of the letters and everything. And it was an upgrade on the patch that I had. Um, and I paid a decent amount for it. And obviously, he was very fair with me because we've been dealing with each other a long time and we're friends. But it's one of those things where I'm much more comfortable paying up for that. If you give me a choice, but it's also autographed. So I'm getting a game used patch with a nice patch piece plus an on card autograph. So to me, you're combining the two things. Emblem of endorsement is one of my favorite subsets that the cup has. It's really nice patch pieces, usually two of them, two patch pieces, and an on card autograph. It's the autograph on top of it that really makes it. I like the patch pieces too, but I'm not going to kill myself for the patch pieces.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So that's just kind of the approach I take to it. Also, to be fair though, in the spirit of full fairness, I've also been collecting Modano for more than 25 years. I've got a lot of different stuff. I've got a lot of nice stuff. I've put together enough of the collection. To me, the centerpiece ones are more like the shields. And when I was able to get my hand on one of the shields that I got, it's that little piece there with the NHL shield and everything. I paid $400 for mine. So, and I thought about, I didn't end up making a play on it, but one of the ones from UD Premier, the first year of UD Premier, again, first years are really appreciated by folks in those particular things. And UD Premier is a high end brand as well. So that one actually went for 1,000 US. If you're telling me 1,000 US and I got to buy something, I'm buying the shield card. I'll take the
Oh,
shield card at 1,000.
100%.
Way
Yeah,
easily, 100%.
because and this is outside of set collectors. You can go look at like NT
Yep.
for basketball or football. You get a logo man or an NFL shield, and one of those, it doesn't even have to be a top tier player. It's going to draw a significant amount of money. And I'm sure
Yes.
in the cup, it's the same way. If you get the shield auto for the cup, even on not even a significant upper tier player, it's still going to draw it because people, like you said, have the patch collections, but owning that shield piece, I have a couple MLB logo man that they're just cool. Owning that game used, that is, I don't know, it's just a cool piece to own. So
Yeah. So if you can take the same dollar amount, like for me in a pecking order thing. Now today the shields would cost more. If at the time that one became available, I didn't have the money sitting around that I could just quickly go and make a decision. In retrospect, it might have been worthwhile making a play, maybe moving some other stuff because I'm not going to be able to get that shield at that price again. If it comes on the market again, it'll go for more. But given the choice, dollar amount in terms of what we're talking about, yeah, 1,000 is too rich for my blood for that card. Although it's a nice card, but the problem is, even if I had acquired it, even from first year of the cup, it'd be like the 8th best card from the first year of the cup that I have. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not playing that game. That's if we're if we're getting Sanderson or money and we're just throwing around for Roots just to have on our table somewhere. If we're talking that kind of money, then then that's a different conversation. Then I'll just throw it for the sake of throwing it.
Sure.
Yeah. So real quick, so I wanted to talk about that because I wanted to give that as an example of the contrast of 2 auctions, 2 patches, same player, same weekend, same general era as well. One is 05, one is 09, but still in the same general area of the player's career. Flagship versus the cup. Kind of the 2 different directions that people took that. I just thought it'd be kind of interesting to compare those 2. So now what I like to do is my main topic is a little bit more broad. It's a little nebulous. So allow me to kind of give a quick story to center it, to kind of explain what my head was at on this. So this weekend, I was doing a couple of things around here, and YouTube algorithm, of course, will feed you different things it thinks you might be interested in. So I was checking out YouTube as I do, and it came across one thing that it was a podcast episode, and I looked at it, and it looked a little familiar. So I went and I clicked on it and checked it out. And I'll give a quick background. Back about 10 years ago, maybe a little more. So let's say around between 2010 to 2012, 13, YouTube landscape was a completely different beast than it is today. That was the early days of the influencers because they barely existed. The multi-channel networks was the thing. If anybody remembers those, they were basically accumulating all these different creators under their umbrella because YouTube had the monetization on YouTube was a completely different animal, and all these things were establishing themselves. All these genres were trying to figure themselves out. One of the genres that did very well in that time period and grew, but it took some time to develop, was the video game genre. You had the Let's Players, you had the people that like talking about the news and everything, but it was still early days. Remember, this is 2012. You got to think back then, it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. It wasn't as common as it is today. You got Twitch today, you got this, and we've also got platforms like StreamYard that let us do this really easily. Back then, you had to set it up yourself with OBS and figure out how to make it all work and do all those things. So anyway, around that time, one of the channel networks that came together was a channel network called the Game Station. So I'm giving you this background to kind of explain how it plays in the nostalgia thing. So the Game Station had a whole bunch of creators under its umbrella, and one of them created a flagship podcast show. It was called the TGS Podcast and then became the Co-optional Podcast. So you had 3 hosts involved in that at that time. That show ran from about 2012 was the first episode. The last episode, I think, was around 2019. So it ran for the better part of 7 years and had over 300 episodes. The first episode now has over 600,000 views. They were getting hundreds of thousands of views per. Now remember, this is 2012. Think 2012, hundreds of thousands of views and what
Wow.
that's worth and the audience that you had built at that time. So they ran it for 7 years, and it ended finally when the one of the main hosts who kind of initiated the whole thing, he died of cancer, unfortunately. He was only 33 at the time, so young guy still. He died of cancer, unfortunately. His wife took it over a little bit because she had been involved in the business side of things. I think they ran it for another 40 episodes, and then it kind of went on permanent hiatus. That was back in 2019. But two of the original hosts still kept in contact for a very long time. But you got to remember, this show started in 2012, ran until 2019. It's been gone for 4 years, or sorry, 5 years. Well, 4 years and change, 5 years, whatever. So anyway, so I get this thing on my feed, and it's a new podcast episode. It's not called the same thing. It's called something else. But I can recognize from the screen grab that it's two of the three hosts. The other two remaining hosts, they're still around. So they went and did their episode, and they invited one of their friends who was a mainstay, a regular on it. And they had decided, so I watched the video that precipitated that. It came across my algorithm accidentally. I clicked on it to listen to it and watch it. And almost immediately, I got the vibe of the 2012, 2013, 2014 shows, because you still had 2/3 of the folks involved in it still being a part of it. But what's funny about it, and this is this whole convoluted build up towards it and how this will play into the nostalgia thing, listening to them talk and banter back and forth immediately brought me to remembering what those episodes were like back then. And at the time that I was listening to their stuff originally was when I was commuting from work and I had a 90-minute commute, and having a 2 to 3 hour podcast episode helped me kill the time because I would be listening to it, coming to and fro and the whole thing. But here's the thing. It also led me down the path on the weekend. After I listened to that episode and listened to the first couple they've done, I'm going to subscribe and I'm going to keep an eye on it and I'm going to watch it because it does have that nostalgic thing for me. But I went back and listened to a couple of the old episodes, and the information is dated because it's talking about video games and consoles and systems that are long since obsoleted. The banter holds up though. And that's the thing that struck me about it. And when I went to the comment section, there are still people commenting even 6 months or 3 months or 2 months ago. And even this weekend after the other one launched, the other podcast, they're like, seeing that reminded me of this. So I had to come back and watch this again. So they were feeling that nostalgic pull to 2012, 2013 when they first started watching this, and just seeing two out of the three hosts still able to do the same thing, even though this time had passed, and one of them had a kid and moved to England and all this stuff is going on. And like a whole life had passed in the last 5 years, but they had kept in touch. So they were like, yeah, we just hadn't had the opportunity, but yeah, we got together and said, would you want to still do this? And I, yeah, still want to do it. But the third host obviously passed away, so he can't be involved in it, but the other two can still do it. So now they're doing their own thing, but it still has the feel. It still has the flavor of the old one, and still inviting some of their old friends who were on the old show and everything. So it's not a rehash of the original. They didn't try to redo it, but they still managed to capture a lot of that original flavor. But just hearing it, the banter and the format and everything immediately reminded me of that. And I was able to kind of go back to exactly what I was doing at that time. That's the power of nostalgia. That's the point that I was getting to with this one. Now, bringing it all the way around, believe it or not, I'm going to bring it all the way around to the sports card side of things. Two things struck me about that. Number one, the whole thing with the bantering and everything, as I listened to it and kind of listened to the original version as well, it kind of struck me that indirectly, a lot of what I do with the live stream, and even with a format like this, it reminds me of elements of that. The random derailments, the silliness interspersed with a little bit of actual information and that element of it. So I think in a certain way, that whole co-optional podcast, TGS podcast and everything, even though it's a different genre, it's video games, it's a whole different thing. It does still kind of feed the way the content that I like to create and the content that I like to consume. So it was just funny to me that it struck me that it was like, yeah, there's actually some similarities, even though I'm not going to pretend I'm not trying to rip off their shtick. They were doing their own thing back then. But I think it is interesting that a little bit of it crept into this one. And when I listened to it again, I was like, yeah, I can hear some of the similarities concept wise carried forward. So bring it back around to the cards. For a lot of times, people get the same thing when they're working on certain sets or collections, or they see some cards, or they get a chance to go through, because you can kind of see like, yeah, what was I doing at the time that I was putting together this set, or the time that I was finding this thing, or the time I was searching for it, or the time that Eric made a creepy smile with a hockey player, or some random thing at a card shop. Wait, that was 5 years ago. What was I doing 5 years ago? I was doing this. And so it brings you back to that moment. Same way that a movie can bring you back to the moment, or some music can bring you back to that moment. I've got examples of that. But so with that preamble, is there any cards or items in your collections anywhere there that specifically bring you back to a certain time and place. So Brandon, Eric, who wants to go first?
Brandon, you can if you want, but I can grab it right here and show you exactly what you're talking about.
Go ahead, Eric.
Here you go. 1988. My first hockey card. Somebody gave me this while we were walking home from school. I was a freshman in high school. I did not know that hockey cards were a thing. I knew baseball cards were a thing. I had never seen. None of my other friends growing up collected cards, but I knew baseball cards existed.
For the audio version, can you give what the card is, just so we're all covered?
This is a Pat Verbeek 1984-85 Topps rookie card. And this buddy of mine, when I was a freshman in high school, pulled out a stack of hockey cards. Now, I liked hockey. I grew up watching hockey. Hockey, when I think of hockey and I watch games, I think of my dad. I think of sitting on his lap, and he had me in one hand and a beer in the other, and watching the Bruins and talking about the Bruins and yelling and screaming, and it, so that's nostalgia. Mm-hmm. But I call me stupid, whatever. I had no idea hockey cards existed until somebody gave me this. And my first question was, do they make those? And again, I know it sounds stupid. First question, do they make those with Bruins? I didn't know if there was a special team set. They only made them for the New Jersey Devil. I had no idea. I had never met anyone who collected cards. I had never collected cards. I had no idea. And when something clicked, when they handed me this Pat Verbeek card, and I got so excited about it, he told me I could keep it because he had a stack of them, and they were all New Jersey Devil cards that somebody gave him. And I've had it ever since. This is the very first hockey card I ever put in my hands. And when I see it, when I think about it, and I realize that this is the card that is responsible for all of this, for me sitting here talking to you guys today, for me going to Canada, for me having an Instagram account, all of it started in 1988 when somebody handed me this Pat Verbeek rookie card. It opened up an entire world to me I did not know existed, and it has brought me nothing but happiness ever since then, all because of this.
Brendan, any thoughts there related? So Eric understood the assignment. That's basically what I was getting at. I gave the example of that thing because it literally came across my desk by accident. I wasn't expecting it, and as soon as I clicked on it, I was like, "Wait, this is a new thing? It's not the old thing. It's actually the new thing," which led me down the rabbit hole looking at the old thing because I remembered a lot of what came. Again, it can be different things. I gave you multiple examples just to convey, but anything there that strikes you in similar manner?
So I really wish my room was kind of set up a little bit different. I like that display back there, but I have 3 display cases hanging on the walls in front of me here. And the one that I put in the middle and that I enjoy the most is the ones that what I call the cards from me growing up. They're all 80s and 90s in there. And unfortunately, throughout my lifespan, I have had to restart my collection twice. When I turned 19 and moved to Indiana, I left, I only took what I could fit in a car and left everything behind. And then, it got disposed of. And then due to a previous bad relationship, everything that I had reaccumulated, that got disposed of again. So I am on my 3rd iteration, and quite honestly, the best iteration of my sports card collection. But there's one card, actually, I got 2 cards here to pull out. The first card show me and the missus went to, I met this older gentleman. He had a lot of vintage cards. I didn't have a ton of vintage when I was a kid, but there was one card that I thought I was hot shit because I had it, young kid. In the Beckett magazine, it was listed, I believe it had the RC logo back then, but it was the 55 Bowman Hank Aaron.
Oh,
And I
nice.
traded this card as a teenager for, I don't remember exactly what all the trade was, but I know one of them, and I don't even know why in the hell I wanted it, but it was one of like the classic, and it looked like a comic hero type drawing, but it was of Troy Aikman.
Okay.
I thought the card was cool looking, but I was not a Troy Aikman fan, so it was that and a few other things. But I traded the Hank, and I had always regretted getting rid of this card. And an older gentleman had gave it to me, and I just thought it was awesome to have Hank Aaron's rookie. The next card I'm going to show everybody, if you're watching and you are into sports cards outside of hockey, you will know this card because, well, who doesn't? It is the 90 score Bo Jackson. And this was iconic on the Beckett magazine. And I actually got so excited because me and her went to Target one day, and they had those little junk wax boxes that had like all the different packs in it from like junk
You
wax
mean
era.
a repack product, you say?
It was one of a repack product with
What's
all
what
of
it
the
was.
junk wax era packs.
By
in it.
definition, that is exactly what it was. That's what it was. Yeah.
And I pulled the freaking Bo, and she was like, this was new with her getting into the cards with me, and she couldn't understand why I got so excited that I pulled this card, especially out of one of those stupid junk wax repacks. But
Yeah.
here we are. The 90 score Bo, the iconic Nike Beckett image. It had full circle that image. I would almost, some people might argue, but this was probably up there with some of the Jordan stuff. This Bo, the poster and the advertising that they used of this and everything, and Bo knows and all of that. Unfortunately, obviously he had the injury, but yeah, those would be two that just brought so much back. Obviously the Hank just being a young boy and having a card like that, and it kind of, I was never into vintage, except for seeing and reading the stories and into in the Beckett's. But even today, I would have to say the middle display case, because those are the ones that were the cards that either I had growing up or that I wanted, like my friends had and I wanted them, and now I've been able to get them. It's the Barry Sanders, the Griffeys, the Emmett Smiths, the Marino Montanas, all of them, the Gretzky rookie, Lemieux. That is the case that really is my favorite. So.
Makes sense. And just for, like I said, just in the spirit of talking through it, the card in question was the black and white Bo Jackson photo where he was wearing the football shoulder pads with the baseball bat behind. So that's just kind of, if anybody's ever seen that, it is an iconic image. It was used for advertising. It was actually on a Beckett magazine. It was used in a variety of different things, and it was a big iconic pose. But again, exactly what I'm talking about. That's kind of was. I started off with that specific example because it came directly across, but at the same time, it works, it applies. And then using it on cards or using it on, it could have been autographs. There's a bunch of those that we could use and talk about. Examples of those too.
I'll even go further, because since I do the yard sailing and stuff like that, and you mentioned the video games, I have this back here on the shelf, so it's not easily seen, but I found this at a yard sale one day. And
He's got a Game Boy.
I got a Game Boy, an original Game Boy. It does work. And I got stupid, overly excited, probably way more excited than I should have gotten as a grown man finding a Game Boy. But I didn't get the pleasure of having the Nintendo. I didn't get to play. I played it at a friend's house, but my parents didn't let me play the Nintendo and all that. My grandparents bought me the Game Boy. This
Mm.
was my video game console, and then it moved into a Game Gear. And then when I got old enough to buy a system, I did get the Sega Genesis, and I actually
Mhm.
had the 32X and the Sega CD, the whole little
Oh, so
setup.
you were that guy.
I was that
So-
guy. I had the whole setup, and then advanced to the PS1.
Yep.
But was my this was my buddy. You know, I didn't have a close, like, me and my stepdad didn't get along, and I kind of grew up in my bedroom, so to speak, and this was my friend growing up playing Super Mario World, Tetris, you know. I remember going to buddies' houses playing Super Tecmo Bowl and all that. And um, you are spot on when it comes down to that nostalgia lane. It's like
Mhm.
there's just something we may not remember everything from our childhood, or even throughout the years, but there are some pieces and elements to it that when it hits you, it just draws a different energy out of you.
Yep.
And this was one of those things. It was like I hadn't had one in what, I don't know, 30 years. And I seen one at a yard sale, and it just got me freaking pumped that I found
Yeah.
a Game Boy.
Yeah. But the reason why I led off with that specific example was I didn't go all the way back to childhood. I was very specific. I took you. So I'm 40 years old now. But if we talk 10 years ago, I was in my 30s, my early 30s.
Mhm.
So, but like I said, I had a commute to work, and even then, I wasn't super into video games. I enjoyed them, but it was like I said, it was the bantering. It was the fact that the podcast. It's remember what I talked about inform or entertain. The podcast itself was entertaining. It wasn't the fact that they were talking about all the video game. At that point, I wasn't in the video game scene heavily. I wasn't playing a ton of the games, so I didn't necessarily know what games they were talking. But again, they'd start talking about the game for a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden there'd be a little mini derailment. There'd be a little bit of go off on a bit of a tangent, talk about something else, and they concoct this whole scenario out. And the host is trying to like keep it, but at the same time, he's kind of enjoying the diversion. That's why I say like I joked about it, but it's like, does that sound familiar a little bit? If anybody watches the Friday show, where it's like, yeah, you kind of keep it on the rails a little bit, but sometimes you let it go off the rails just for fun, just to see where it goes, what direction it takes you. But that's why it made me laugh watching those old episodes go unintentionally. I borrowed elements of it. But that was something that I was using to help me pass the time going to and from that job, because at that job at that time, I had to take the GO train, go over to Toronto, go over to Union Station, and then take the subway, and it was at the end of the line. So I had to go all the way up to the end of the line, crossing all the stations one after another and you lose signal. So you have to download it. So I had a little tablet at that time, not an iPad, but I had a tablet, a small one, and I basically was watching because it was a video podcast at that time, which that was the other thing that struck me watching it. Even in 2012 with the OBS, it probably looks better than a lot of the podcasts we're doing right now. I got to be completely honest with you because they put a nice layout and did the whole thing in there. OBS is very powerful. You can do a lot of things on it. So it's one of those things where if you take the time to do that, and they actually, after it only took a certain amount of episodes, they actually hired an animator to do an animated intro to the show. So they would start off with an animated intro with music and everything. And then so you got to think this is 2012, 2013, 2014. Like they're way ahead of the game on this. They're ahead of the curve. So by the time they finished up, the rest of the podcasting world for that had kind of caught up. But at that moment, they were on the cutting edge of a lot of that stuff. But that's why I think the audience liked it. That's why I went in the comment section, as I often do. I always talk about going in the comment section. This was an 11-year-old podcast episode. Comment section. 3 days ago, I missed this. All it took was the two of the three hosts reuniting to do a new show that borrows a lot of the elements from the original show. They're not just trying to replicate the old show, because the host was the driving force behind it. The host was the one who came up with the idea and brought them together and did the whole thing. But even from the first episode, the bantering derailment was happening in the first episode. And then it just continued on, and they had so many guests, repeat guests. Again, stop me if this sounds familiar. A rotating panel of certain folks that would come by on a regular basis and wreak havoc. And it would be that kind of thing. So that's why I say I find it very amusing that it kind of still informs things. So there are branches off of this tree, other things in other categories related to it. This still kind of played off. So to a certain degree, I guess that's the best legacy. That's almost the best respect you can pay to the original podcast host and what he came up with. That even after you passed away, show's over, it's all gone. People still look back on it fondly, and you just gave him an excuse to go back and watch the old back catalog because it's still on the YouTube, and you can watch most of the 300 episodes are still there, 2 or 3 hours at a time. They had a live show at PAX. They did those. They had an audience, a crowd, and it was kind of interesting how popular that show got at the time. And it's been years, but people still kind of fondly remember it.
You'll have to send me a link so I can check it out and see exactly what you're referring to. Because now that you're comparing it to what we do on Fridays specifically, I'm curious to see, to see the connection. So, you're gonna have to send it to me so I know what to look up.
Eric will have to figure
Are
out
you
which one
saying
of
you
the,
want
which
to
one of the
see
characters.
which character you're played by on there?
Yeah, basically that's what I figure he's trying to figure out. I go, wait a minute, which one is it?
Yeah, the one that gets picked on the most. That's the one.
I have my initial theory who you are. I have my theory, but like I said, it just it turned out that way. It was me watching it after the fact where I put a couple of connections together because it wasn't intentional. But again, it is the type of content that I enjoyed watching, so it did make sense that obviously would play into what I like to see in a program or in a presentation. So it's an influence. You can just call it. It's an influence. The best way is to give homage, but not try to replicate because it's its own thing from its own time. And that was kind of interesting. So I do actually have one more that actually leads me down since Brandon brought up the video game one. But Eric, you're full of a million of them. Tell you what, since it's in your lane, there's a bunch of autographs there that you've got that have different stories. But is there any particular one that strikes you? Anything that's within arm's reach there that you want to quickly run through while I grab something?
Yeah, what one autograph in particular means a lot to me. And it's because of the fact that this is a Bruins legend, but not in the way of Bobby Orr or Ray Bourque or John Busick or Eddie Shore, but because of tragedy. Back in the early '80s, the Boston Bruins had a young player by the name of Normand Lavallée, and while he was playing in a game in Vancouver, in between periods, he had a health emergency, and he had a seizure, and he was unconscious for several weeks. And when he woke up, he was disabled. And Normand has been a Bruin fan favorite since from that day on. And his biggest moment was when the closing of the Boston Garden and they had the last skate. He surprised everybody by putting skates on for the first time since his episode. And Ray Bourque pulled him around the Garden ice one last time, and everyone in the stands is crying. Everyone at home is crying, and it's one of the biggest moments in in Bruins history. And I never thought at that moment in 1995, watching him on TV and literally getting teary-eyed, that I would be, and I want to use the words, appropriate words, a acquaintance of his. Okay, we're not, I don't have his phone number. We're not best friends, but we're always very happy to see each other when we do. And I had him sign this puck for me, one of the last times we were together. And of course, his handwriting is very poor due to him being disabled since that game in Vancouver back in the early '80s. And you can see it's kind of scribbly and everything, but you see his number 19 there. And this is thanks for the memories. Last skate, last hurrah puck from the Boston Garden. And, they had every living Bruin legend there that night, including Bobby Orr, which always gets the loudest ovation. But for that night, Normand got the loudest applause. And to know him now and to know what a great guy he is, his humanity for the charities that he participates in, for his sense of humor. It's just this puck means a lot to me. He's just he brings people strength. I mean, this is a kid that was on top of the world, playing in the NHL at 19 years old, and all of a sudden he all of a sudden has this health emergency, and his life has changed from that moment on, and he's still pushing through every single day and has this great attitude about life and is always laughing. And there are many times when I might be having a bad day, and I'll see this puck and it'll make a difference. So Normand is an absolute wonderful guy, and I'm very happy to say that we're acquaintances, and I always look forward to seeing him. So it would have to be that one.
It was. I'm going to go over one here, and then, but before I do, Brandon, is there any other one that you wanted to touch on, or I can kind of finish off on this one? It's really up to you.
As far as autos, there's one that I've thought about searching out that I don't have, because it was the first autograph that I can remember owning, and I got it with my grandmother, who is no longer with me. I don't even know why I wound up getting this one, but it was a Mark Rippon 89 Pro Set autograph. But it was at a mall card show when I was young, probably 10 or 11 years old. And to be honest, I didn't know if it was real. I always questioned whether or not it was even real. But I would say one, though, speaking, we were talking before recording about Juan Soto and the potential of him landing on a new team.
Mm-hmm.
I have several Juan Soto autographs, but there's specific ones that I search for now if I go to buy an autograph of his, and it's something that will always stick with me. And this is one that captured the moment, and it's actually the finest moments. But me and the missus were at the 2019 wild card game, which this image was taken from, when he, got the hit to right field that Trent Grisham overplayed, and it brought home, the runs to take the lead. And he rounded second base and got caught in a little run down there to give time for the guys to score. And he was like, cheering and pumping up. And that stadium just exploded. And I had that whole at bat, that whole play out. I had recorded that moment on my phone when it happened. And it was just, that's something me and her will never forget, because we witnessed that. And that was the breakthrough that led the Nationals to go onto that crazy playoff run in 2019 to win the World Series. And so Topps has done a good job of capturing that moment. And so when I see cards with like that imagery, not even just autos, but I have, some back there, the Stadium Club ones and stuff, that's just something that's like one of those things as a fan. There's moments you won't forget, and that's one of them that will always be ingrained up here. And whether it's today or, God willing, 20 years from now, I'll always look back as one of the best sports moments I've witnessed. So
very nice, very nice. So that's kind of the point of this episode, was really just to have a little bit of fun with this, because it was open-ended and it could go in a bunch of different directions, and we could kind of figure out however we wanted to take it. So what I'll do is I'll finish it off by going full circle. I started off with a video game related thing, and I'll finish with a video game related thing, since Brandon brought up that piece. There's only one thing. I did collect video games a little bit, because honestly, I've collected different things over time because it's fun for me. And I could talk about different collections. Maybe we'll do it in a future episode. We'll talk about other collections we have, because honestly, that would be fun for me, because I've got a bunch of different stuff I've collected over the years, and I enjoy that stuff. But during the video game collection side of it, there's some old classics, games that I enjoyed playing, that I picked up for those reasons. Streets of Rage, those were a lot of fun. Those were a lot of enjoyable, and I can name off a bunch that kind of fall into that category. But there's one game that I went back to rebuy. I actually had a copy, and then we sold it off years ago. And then some years back, I went and bought another copy, and I'll explain why. So the game was for the Super Nintendo, and it was Wings 2 Aces High. So it's this game right here. So it got a box on it. It's not a mint condition box or anything. It's just a box, but it's got a little wear on it. I wouldn't go out of my way to go buy it
on there.
That's right. That's right. So it's basically, a fighting ace game. Basically, you were a fighting ace, and you would go on a variety of missions, do some strafing runs, do some bombing runs, and then also fight off against other fighter planes. Now, why this game? Why did I go through the trouble of getting this game? It's by the way, it's not very good. Go ahead.
I was just going to take a guess.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say it's a game that you enjoyed playing with Carlos Sr.
You're sort of right. But it has Carlos Sr. has a part of the story. But no, I never enjoyed playing this game. This game really does kind of suck. But the reason I got it is associated with a memory that Carlos Sr. did participate in. So that portion of it is accurate. So let me explain. So in the early 1990s, and even for a while after, I think it continued in the 2000s, there was a channel, a youth channel. It was called YTV. So the channel itself is basically kids programming, youth TV, YTV. That's what it was called. And it had a variety of different shows on it that were regular staples. And one of the regular staples of YTV in the early 90s period into the 2000s was called Video and Arcade Top 10. So it was basically a game show. It was a game show / kind of news show. So as the title implies, it would talk about movies, it would talk about video games, it would talk about those things. But there was a game show element to it, where they would have certain games in these different generations from the Nintendo era through the Super Nintendo, the Genesis era, and all these different ones as they went in. And they would have 3 kids, I think, come in and play the game in question. And then they would run the segments and everything, do all of it. And the idea was whatever criteria was there, you would try to play the game. Whoever won the game would end up winning prizes. And they changed the format a couple of different times over the years. One of them is that you would win a series of prizes. Then they did a thing with a trash can where you had a ball that corresponded to some prizes. So you would get whatever plus a copy of the game. So that was the game show thing. So you actually have to call a phone line and try to get through. And if you got through, you would get on a casting call. And if you got on the casting call, you would go to the studio. And again, if your name is called up, you would go and play the game and be part of it. And then if you won, you would win the prize. So able to make the call, got through. Carlos Sr. and I went to the studio. And in this case, we got the option to play the game. We were able to do it. And they do tell you the game in advance. So since I knew that we were going to actually get a chance to play the game, it was Wings 2 Aces High. So at that point, Carlos Sr. went and rented a version of the Super Nintendo because we didn't have the system yet. Eventually, we would have the system, but we didn't have it at that time. So he rented the Super Nintendo and a game, and I practiced to try to get as good as I could at the game. And then I also got a chance to practice in the back a little bit as well. So I won. So I won that show. I won the cartridge, and I won. If you guys remember the creepy crawlers, yeah, that little oven thing, whatever, one of those deals. So I won one of those. There was a whole little prize pack, included a copy of the game and those things. So I won that. So that was part of it. And because they screwed up the original take, after I won, they tell me I win. And then obviously I'm excited that I won. But then they're like, oh, we didn't get that. It's like, oh, so could you do it again? Just like pretend you're excited that you won. And I was like, sure. Yeah. It's like, you kind of ruined the moment. We kind of already lived the moment, but I guess we'll do it again, for TV. Take 2, try again. So anyway, so I was on the game show. And also I got to lord it over my younger brother, who was the big video game guy. Because the fact that he was the video game guy, and I was the one who went on the video game show and won. And every time the Blockbuster Video World Championships were, I finished 1 place ahead of him both years that we both played, which of course may have infuriated him to this very day. He might still be bitter, just a little bit.
So I'm reminding him all the time. I'm sure he is.
As the older brother, I'm contractually obligated to remind him to stoke the bitterness, is what I do.
Right.
So anyway, so for nostalgic purposes, given that was, and Carlos Sr. was a big help, obviously, renting the system so that I could get it. So this was one of the prizes. The rest of the shit is since gone. Go ahead.
That's a trophy. That's not.
It is. 100%.
That is a trophy.
It is literally.
He repurchased a trophy, man.
Yeah, so I had to reclaim it. I had earned it the first time, but the game is trash, but there is a nostalgic element to what it took to earn. So this is a representation of the OG, the original trophy. So that's why I have another copy of it. Again,
Well,
nostalgia.
since you threw out trash, I'll share this one just because. But
Sure.
if you don't know, how about the Atari?
Yes, buddy. E.T., the
You
game master,
mentioned
Sanderson the
trash.
Ore, and his references from the
game
Atari.
sucked.
It does. It does. And it is so for the folks listening to audio. So it's a copy of Atari 2600, the infamous ET, and it is a water graded. What's the grade on it?
It's an 8.5, and I bought it because of the whole. It's actually I bought it. The game's actually valuable, but I bought it for kind of humor purposes because of the whole backstory of the 52 Manos getting tossed into the Hudson. What game do you know that got put in the landfill?
That is a
actually,
fact.
I'm pretty sure it notates it on the label.
Oh my god,
Yes,
that was so bad.
many unsold cartridges were buried in Alamogordo, New Mexico landfill. It is on the WADA label. So
Fantastic.
it's like
Fantastic.
you just have to get the
They
ET.
they were in such a rush to get a video game out to make money off the ET, fanaticism that was happening. They put no effort into the game, and it was horrible.
Oh yeah, it sucked. That's why I got it.
Hold on, let me be fair.
Let
me be fair because I watched a documentary on it, and they actually interviewed the guy who designed the game. And to be fair, Eric, let's get this right. Let's use our phrasing correctly.
Okay.
There was effort, but they basically told him he had no time. So he's like, "Do what you can." And they're like, "You got like I think they gave him like 8 weeks." And they're like, "Wait, well, what? You want me to do what?" Because the same guy who did that also designed some other games that were actually extremely well received that people actually did like. So like, it's not like the guy had no talent, but he's like, "Wait, you're giving me no time, no resources. It's just me. Whip it together, see what happens." Go.
So
Yeah. So I can't give him all the blame. I'll give him a little bit of a pass only because they basically threw it in his lap and said, "Oh, can you finish it in a couple of weeks?" I guess I'll try. And the result is the result. Mind you, in a certain way. Now, two things. So that is an infamous card because it was part, and a lot of people blame the ET game, but truthfully, there were a lot of garbage games around that time. A lot of shovelware in the Atari side of things. It was a very high profile example, but it wasn't the only thing. But unfortunately, Atari missed the window by doing all that and allowing that to happen. Is that it crashed the video game scene completely. It wasn't until Nintendo was able to resurrect it after that they were able to somewhat recover and rebuild the video game industry from the ground up, because they basically killed it. All the shovelware basically destroyed it, and it lost a chunk of a generation there.
What is interesting is I can't remember what they called it, but I seen a video recently. They are reviving the Atari system. You can plug it HDMI.
Yeah, the Atari Amico. I think it's the Atari Amico.
Well, and it'll play the old cartridges. Not all of them. There's a list of them that it's capable of playing. But yeah, I seen an unboxing, and the guy like showed. It's a very simple system. It has like a small little, computer chip in there, or whatever. But I thought that was interesting that they're actually trying to revive the Atari.
I want my.
Oh, sorry. It was the Intellivision Amico. Sorry, it was the Intellivision Amico.
I want my
they have the
that breaks after about 5 hours.
The joystick is the exact same size and everything. Same design, same size, wired, everything, just like the original.
Now, you're talking about the plug and play one, because they had a lot of those plug and play ones.
No, it's a new system that I just seen. The video was released maybe a month ago. Okay. They're literally bringing the Atari back.
Well, listen, Game Master Eric. Look, from this past Friday's live stream, we learned that Eric was the game master in that time period. So they're basically trying to be like, Eric, this is your time. It is your time to reclaim your throne atop the game masterdom. So
yeah,
he's like, you can be the Frogger King yet again. Live the dream, Eric. I believe in you.
I'd love me some Frogger.
That's all I'm saying, man. And listen, as long as you stay out of the Super Nintendo, because we know in Wings 2 Aces High, I got you, bro.
I never had Super Nintendo. None of my friends ever had it, so I never played any of those games. And I kind of got into sports and things like that, and I'd rather be outside than playing video games. So, I didn't move on with everyone else when it came to the video game stuff. Not until my daughter got to an age and wanted a video game system. Then I'm like, all right, well, what are they like now? And it's like, oh my god, these are so realistic. This is crazy.
The university days were really good for that because we had a lot of downtime at home. so we'd plug in the system and play to kill some time before we went to the pub. So that's basically how we had to play it out. So it worked out. It actually worked out quite nicely. Tar 2600 plus. Gotcha.
Yeah,
I'll pull it up here.
It comes with a cartridge that you actually have to put. It has like the little 4 switches. I can't remember what they call them, but that'll tell the system which game of the 10 to play off that one cartridge. You see them right there, the dim switches.
Eric, let's go. Atari 2600 plus. Let's go.
Oh
and then you can actually play the original Atari cartridges in it too. But there's like a list of certain, like, I guess there's only some of them it won't read, but it'll play.
Dude,
a wide
Missile
variety
Command, Eric. Let's go. Missile Command.
Love me some Missile Command.
There you go.
Yar's Revenge.
And so the bottom one here, Yar's Revenge. Yar is this revenge. I think the guy who designed this one was the same one who also did ET. That's why, ironically, like Yar's Revenge was actually very well received. People liked that game, and it's the same guy who did ET. That's why I think that's why the guy went on that document going, "Listen to me. It's not that I can't make a good game. Look at this other one. This one's good. People like this one. You put me in a time crunch." He was trying to like absolve himself. He goes, "It's not my fault. I did the best I could. You didn't give me enough time." I just think it's funny. It kind of worked out that way. But yeah, but bottom line is that the nostalgia train can go quite a ways. I had this discussion with Jake, 90s V-Ball cards, but one of the points that I made is that it's fun to visit nostalgia. Conversations like this are enjoyable. It's fun to go down a memory lane a little bit, but it's important not to get drowned in it and just live there. You do have to leave there and live your life. Like, but it's fun to visit. Once in a while, hanging out in nostalgia lane a little bit, that's completely all right. It's completely fine. That's why I say, Brandon was right. It's like I still have this as kind of my trophy for my moment. Again, I can lord it over my younger brother. And listen, I'm not saying I do, but I do. Totally, I do. Yeah,
totally you do.
So, a guy who dedicated his life to the video games, and my video game accomplishes dwarf them. And I have to remind him of that. As a part-timer who just did it on occasion when I had a moment, I was still able to crush him. So I just thought, I'd make sure to address that and cover it. But yes. So any other thoughts then before we wind her down and call her an episode?
I think nostalgia plays a huge part in all collecting hobbies. It's one of the reasons why we do it. It's one of the reasons we started it and continue to do it and get so much enjoyment out of it. So I think it's a huge piece.
Totally agree. And it's part of the reason that now I kind of secretly wonder if Wada ever graded a Wings 2 Aces High. It's the only thing that would make it better. Eric, the only thing that would make it better is having it in the fucking Wada thing.
I have to say, these cases make sports card grading look silly because these things are nice. I mean, some of the prices people pay for them, like game-wise, ET, are silly, but these cases are nice.
I like the fact that it stands up on its own, though. Like, look, forget everything else. Man, I like the fact that it makes for a good display. It makes it kind of easy to display that way.
They're nice. They're very nice.
That part I'm in favor of.
Imagine if Beckett was going to grade that. It would be the size of your desk.
No, actually, Beckett uses a similar thing for the VHS tapes. The VHS slab is smaller than the NT booklet slab.
That's true.
That's what's crazy. You can get an entire VHS graded in a smaller slab than an NT booklet.
Yeah, this is, I kid you not, for those, this is just a regular folder. This is about the size of the slab for a booklet card. You know, it's obnoxious. It's
a little bit of border on it. A little bit of border. A little
It
bit.
is just insane how much
A little bit.
plastic for a card. You know, the card's this big, and I mean, it's. I just hate.
We'll talk more about it on Friday. So that concludes another wonderful episode of the BIC podcast. We occasionally talk about sports cards. That's a reference that will make more sense if you go down the road. I will actually find an episode and I'll put in the description of the co-optional podcast that I was talking about. But again, remember, it's video games oriented and it's years old. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole just for the hell of it, knock yourself out. But to each their own, you'll kind of get that. But that was a little OG reference for people that did happen to see that back in the day. I enjoyed it, and it was a great time killer for me when I was commuting to and from work, and I enjoyed it for what it was. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for joining me down a little trip down nostalgia lane. We'll be back with more videos coming up on the channel. Friday live streams, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is, I also want to thank amgcollectibles.ca for their support of the channel and this podcast. So much appreciated. So if we all don't die of a fiery death as a result of the end of days approaching, you can still get yourself some items at amgcollectibles.ca. And also check out the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel, where there is a podcast there as well, where we talk about things happening in the shop, new cards. I actually got some pictures sent to me. There's actually some cool new cards that came in the shop this past week. So if you do get a chance to check that out, you'll be able to see some cool cards that we will show off and talk about on that venue. So with that said, for Brandon, Bobbles and Ball Cards of that YouTube channel, SGC submissions, and also general hobby bantering, you can also check out 540 Flips, where he talks about his flipping exploits. So you can check out both of those places. Sanderson or Eric on Instagram, where he is a guy who collects Boston Bruins, including OG of OGs. Wow, Helgill. So you can enjoy that and more in those locations. With that said, hit the like button if you're on the YouTube channel. We do appreciate it. If you're listening to the audio version, if you could leave some kind of a 5-star review or something, we would appreciate that as well. Today, we were not 5% more mature. I feel like we were at least 7.5 to 8% more mature than normal. And on that note, have yourselves a great one. We'll catch you in the next one.